This has got to look funny with me sitting around in my robe, but it's kind of hard to decide whether to wear a short sleeve shirt or something a little bit warmer. So at the moment I'm compromising and wearing something temporary that's warmer. It is morning on the 11th of September. Yes, that day, yeah. But you know, life goes on, and so does the ship. We are coming in towards the Breton Island and Sydney, Nova Scotia. I think this is the first time I've been to Canada since our trip to Alaska in '99. I was warned by some folks in the Windjammer that there's not much to see or do here, and considering that we couldn't find any really appealing shore excursions when we were looking, I guess I'm not surprised, but we'll probably go ashore and see what we can find. But for now, I might as well introduce you to the place if you can see it. It's a bit foggy yet. Hopefully that'll change, but I can't make any guarantees. So, till then. Interesting how we could see some of the well, I won't say boardwalk, it's asphalt, concrete. But the dock, we could see an angular area that we're just about to turn onto from our room, but we couldn't see this because it's a fairly narrow strip that we're walking on our way into Sydney here on Breton Island. Don't really have any idea what's here. We have a vague map in our head as to how to get around, but if there's anything to actually see, we're probably just going to stumble upon it rather than actually be directed to it. So I have to admit, there's a road up here that I thought we were taking. But it happens to be that we've got an actual footpath to walk on here, complete with little blue steps on it that we were instructed to stay on, which are right here by the docks. Well, at least this is proof of where we are. Sydney Harbor has as its main focal point what they call, imaginatively enough, the Big Fiddle. And it is just standing right here in the midst of the harbor. Daniel's asking me the difference between a fiddle and a violin, and I have no idea. My guess is, like his, that it has to do in the context in which it's being played. You could put somebody playing a fiddle in an orchestra and he'll call it a violin. You put a violin in a folk setting and it's a fiddle. You're just kind of stuck with that. And that's the thing. I guess Sydney is known for its folk music, and this is how they honor it. Behind the shop fronts that are facing the harbor is a place called Pittman Hall, which, quite honestly, looks a little bit like a convention center. It would remind me of the dealer's room if I didn't know better, complete with all the local wares that are being sold here. Local arts and crafts, from jewelry making to clothing to what have you. So a lot of people are just hanging out here and shopping because it's a lot better than being out in the wet. Daniel keeps reminding me that the weather here isn't as unpleasant as, say, in Nuuk at certain points in time. But it's still gray, cloudy, and both my glasses and the viewfinder on the cameras are getting splashed, so it makes it hard to see what's going on, as well as getting it filmed. But one must soldier on. We only get these few hours here in town. We might as well make our way up. I'll say this much for Sydney, at least this main area that we're walking about in, or trying to walk about in, is laid out in a fairly straightforward grid. We were handed this on our way in, and while our ship's location is actually off the map, you get the general idea of where you are. Right now we're walking up on Nepean Street,
just a little bit north of where the illustration is.
As pretty as St. George's Church goes, it's, in some respects, one of those another beautiful church type of things. Not really sure. There's probably more historicity about it, but I find myself wondering if it's actually being used for its intended purpose. Meanwhile, I guess a place like this, complete with an actual car with the logo on it, is actually being used, at least for community uplift and enrichment. I have to admit, Sydney looks a lot to me like Port Clinton or Put-in-Bay, and if you go back a block or two, there's not much left of this place, it seems. Now, I know there's more than just this peninsula sticking out that we're docked against. There's certainly a lot more residential areas further in, but here at downtown, it looks very much like a typical resort town, complete with the limited size of both the downtown area and the establishments therein. It's a sort of touristy and slightly historical place that, has appeal for some people, but not so much for Daniel and myself. We're just wandering around, finding our way here. I'm sure other people would get more benefit out of it than we would, but as long as we're here, we figure we might as well get out and take a look. And for all the resort town vibes the place gives off, not everything is still around. We have empty storefronts here too. Not sure what to say about this place. Coming past the City Hall, and it's reasonably impressive, but we're only about a block away from the Charlotte Street main drag, if you want to call it that. And this is pretty much the high traffic area, and it's kind of small. Oh, it's bigger than the places we stopped at in Greenland, to be sure. And it'd be kind of nice if we had sunny weather, but we don't, and this is all there is to the place, I think. Unless you have your excursions, which we don't. Nothing really grabbed us. I mean, most of the local stuff has to do with folk music or bar crawling, and it's just not our thing. So we're just walking around, and maybe we won't be out here all that long at all. I'm starting to wonder if it's because we've been to Europe and even to Greenland, where everything's in a different language or a different climate, and so everything seems exotic. And when we arrive in Canada, it's very much like it is in the States, much as I'm sure they'd be annoyed to hear me say something like that. And I'm sorry, you guys function pretty much like we do. So, yeah, it's not exotic as all that. I've mentioned in the past how certain cities seem to have an aroma about them. This one's interesting because it's unexpected. It's one thing for Tallinn to smell like fresh cut timber. It certainly has its fair share of wood. But here we are out in the Maritimes, and what do I smell cooking but Indian food? I think biryani, but I'm not entirely sure. But we've just walked through an area where it's just unmistakable and unescapable. Although at this point we've kind of put that behind us. But yeah, one block in from the main drag on Charlotte Street, George Street looks basically like any other town for the most part, with the possible exception of this church behind us, which for some reason or another doesn't have itself named on the Sydney map. Apparently they didn't think of it as being touristy enough. Maybe it's because it's being used. Sacred Heart Building. Okay, might be the Catholic Church. But with that being said, it looks old and historic enough. Why it wouldn't be on the map is beyond me. I'll be honest, when I saw the notice on the front door of this church, I thought that might be an explanation as to why it's not part of the tourist map. Something about, how the public isn't authorized to be here or something like that.
As it so happens, though, it's still talking about maintaining social distancing of 6 feet between parishioners, I suppose. So, yeah, interesting. Either way, it is not on the tourist map for reasons that I can't fathom, and we still don't know exactly what it is the church of, although we think it's something like Sacred Heart or something like that. But we've got no proof. We have, in the course of crossing maybe 2 or 3 streets, heading, which way were we heading? East, I think, mostly. Northeast, anyway. We have walked our way into what looks like open prairie. I can see a few flags flying way down there where presumably the municipal park is, but quite honestly, there's nothing but open space between here and there. And so, there's nothing but open space between here and there, and I'm not in any mood to walk all the way down there, especially considering that even if there is a park there, it's so wet you probably couldn't use many of the facilities to begin with. It is a few blocks of town, about a mile wide, and then nothing. It's very strange. I won't say we're disappointed by the place because we walked into this having absolutely no expectations whatsoever. It's not like we're bothered about it. We're just getting out and, on solid ground for a change. But yeah, there's not much to do here. Not much to see here. Even Kakotok and Nuuk had a lot of stuff just right there in that area. But this is just kind of empty. Once you leave the Charlotte Street main drag and presumably the Esplanade and the boardwalk up front by the pier. Interestingly enough, right behind us we encountered one of the groups by our ship, I think, a local walking tour. So while they're getting context for all these places on the map, we're just wandering around and finding them. It's more like a scavenger hunt, not that we have any clue as to what it is we've found. For instance, we've just come by the Cosset House, which was built by the first Anglican minister to arrive here in Sydney back in 1787. A Rana Cosset, of course. They do have a admission fee, and Daniel mentions he's not interested enough to bother with that, so we'll just say that we found the place, and that's all that we need to do. Found another place on our way, the Jost House, which presumably, I'm guessing, is one of the older houses here, built by an early settler. Passed by another group on the way, and we're also coming up to another one here. It's like we're taking the same circuit as the walking tour groups. But again, we're just seeing the places. We don't really know anything about the history. And while we did encounter a place that's the Genealogical Society of Cape Breton, we know we don't have any genealogy here, so it doesn't have the same pull for us as, for instance, when Papa took us and pointed out the house where his great-grandfather used to work in Gamlestan in Stockholm. That's the third tour group that we've passed in about the last 10 minutes. And I think there's one up on this corner too. It's almost kind of funny. Here on the Esplanade, we've come across the Father Greg MacLeod house, which I'm assuming is one of the first Catholic priests to arrive here in Sydney way back when. The interesting thing is I've seen several businesses as we pass by with the name MacLeod, either on a passing truck or on a legal firm or whatever. I'm assuming that while they might be related to Father MacLeod, they're not, hopefully, descended from him. I'm going to give the guides that we pass full marks for dressing up in cosplay with the tricorn hats and everything like that. And I'm sure Daniel gets really sick of me doing that typical dad joke of greeting everybody with a "good day, mate," and then stopping myself and saying, "Oh, sorry, wrong Sydney." But it's too good to resist, and quite honestly, the tour groups find it funny.
All right, well, we've gotten down to the boardwalk, and we have birds aplenty here. This is kind of wild. How close can I get before they get spooked? Especially this one, who's not a pigeon like everybody else. I think that's a tern. Hello, folks.
Don't want to step anywhere you shouldn't. But wow. This is kind of fun in its own right. Now here on the edge of the boardwalk, we've run into yet another tour group, as well as a statue, which I'm sure she's describing what it's about. It honestly looks like it commemorates the rescue boats, either World War II or just their Coast Guard. But I don't want to interfere in a group that's already in progress, so I'm not going to mess with that. In any case, we're just going to walk down the boardwalk a little further and see what there might be to see. We've spotted a couple of adverts for places offering poutine, which is mildly tempting, but I think we'll wait until we get to Halifax. I think we're both still full from breakfast, to be honest. And the one place that had an advert didn't say where it was, so that's the point of that. Can't get there and get what we want. Interestingly enough, there is a portion of the boardwalk that we're not allowed to walk on at the moment because the island princess ahead of us is moored right here. And as a result, you'd be stepping over those mooring lines in order to stay on the boardwalk. So they've fenced it off for the time being. Well, we've come to about the end of the boardwalk here, or at least right back to where we came from, which is to say that little mall behind us. And we might do some more shopping, but you've already seen what it looks like in there. So this is pretty much the end of the tour for us, and it's only been about 2 hours since we got off the ship. Some towns just don't have a lot really to look into, especially again if you don't have a guide telling you what's so special about them. So here we are, and that's pretty much the end of the day. Just as well, it's just not pleasant out here, which is a shame. I'm sure it would be nice in sunnier conditions, but it is what it is, and hopefully we can hope for a better day next time. And there's this feeling like since we have a couple more hours here, we really ought to be ashore longer, but honestly, there isn't that much more to see or do here. So we're just gonna head back to the ship and hopefully get a little rest and recovery. And also hope that being out in this damp and fog has not exacerbated the colds we've been fighting. Or is it just me?